Yeah. Okay, so one way to look at it is this way. Okay, so I got football here. Just think of a football scenario. We'll run with football for now. Now, in training, okay, in a
No, I presume it's soccer you're talking about.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Football is a totally different job.
Yeah. Okay, in an environment, football, soccer, whatever you want to call it. Okay, you put the ball down. In training, you're 12 yards away from a goal. Okay, 12 yards away from the goal, you've got the diameter, the goal, 12 yards away. A player strikes a ball for a penalty. They'll score probably 99 times out of 100 in a training environment. Okay, training environment, they'll score 9 times out of 100. Put them in a scenario where, okay, it's a cup final. They put the ball down, it's still 12 yards away, but they strike the ball, they miss the target, or they literally pass it back to the keeper. Why on one hand does the performer, whether it's tennis as well, they're serving for an open, whether it's golf, whatever the sport is, why is it on one hand the performer will do that in a major event, but in a training event they find it a lot easier? What's the difference?
Stress.
Yeah, more relaxed, stress,
Pressure.
Yeah. Pressure, yeah, so all these expectations, so expectation, stress, pressure, mind's relaxed, all these things, okay, come into consideration. So what are they focusing on? What exactly they're focusing on? They've got the technique, okay, you've got these performers, these players, they're technically good enough, skillfully good enough to do what they've got to do, yet what they're focusing on predominantly is the outcome. So they're focusing on the outcome. Okay, and the outcome is scoring a goal, maybe winning the cup, winning the tournament. They're focusing on the outcome. And they forget about the process. Okay? And that applies for technique, and that applies also for tactical. Now, we can visualize, and we're going to look at visualization on two levels today, technically and tactically. Okay? Technically is when you're improving technique. Tactically is when you're experiencing the game, your game awareness. And we talked earlier about having a game A, game B, plan A, plan B, using variable permutation. But technically, some of the best performers technically put them in a high pressure situation and they go to pieces. Put them under pressure and their skill level diminishes completely. And we're not talking about performers here that amateur or semi-pro, we're talking about world-class, top-flight performance. Under certain circumstances, in certain situations, literally, the technique is gone. So you wonder, what are they focusing on, which is key. But more to the point as well, also, technically now, I mentioned yesterday, a lad I was working with, he spent much of his youth career not being able to play because he had Osgood Slatters, which is a condition. I'm not going to pretend to be a medical expert, but it affects the knees. Okay, and every time he trained, he'd get aches and pains and would have to lay off. So he couldn't train as much as he'd like to train. Now he got to me. He was 17 when he came to me. I think 17 or moving towards 17. He had 1 year left in his YTS. In the UK, we've got a YTS youth trainership system. I don't know, you guys in Ireland and Wales is the same sort of system, but between 16 and 18 over here is your apprenticeship. And on the final year of your apprenticeship, you get told if you've got a contract or not. This is a lad who got plenty of ability, but the drawback is he's not played enough for him to make a decision. And the problem you've got, training-wise, and you guys who are the trainers all know, if he tries to train any more than what he already is doing at that age with that condition, he could end up spending a lot more time out as well. So we've got a challenge on our hands, a big, big challenge on our hands in terms of giving the best possible chance. And I said to him, you'll have to learn to visualize technically and improve. And we did what we call a performance profile and looked at every area of his game. And the areas that he felt he wanted to improve, the only way around it was to go away and visualize. He wanted to improve his heading, he wanted to improve his left foot. And the only way around it was to go away and visualize. And there's been studies that have shown that people who visualize improve their performance. There was a study, and I mentioned that reference in the book, in Chicago University years ago. You had 3 groups of people in basketball. Group 1 practiced for 6 weeks physically. Group 2 practiced visually. Group 3 didn't practice at all. In 6 weeks, the group that practiced visually are the groups that improved more than the other groups. The second group, the one that practiced physically, improved. The group that practiced mentally, were the one that improved the most. The group that practiced physically, the second, and the group that didn't practice at all showed no improvement. So it showed the mind and how powerful it is. The lad I'm referring to earlier, he went on, the good news is he went on to get a contract. Macclesfield gave him a contract in the end. Okay, professional contract, 1-year deal. Now, the key to that was, in my mind, from where he is, and like I said before, I'm not just putting it down to the work I did, yet what I would say, when he came to see me, at that point there, he was definitely neither here or there, and I thought, we haven't got time to analyse anything, we've just got to go forward. We haven't got time to faff about here, we've got to think of a plan to moving forward. So I did tell him to spend a lot of time doing recovery. I told him to go do your ice baths, get in the pool, do all these sort of things that are going to help you recover, eat well, sleep well, but beyond that, and beyond your training, visualise. And when I sort of touched base in the following season, and I asked him about how it went, the visualisation, he said it was fantastic. You know, it was great. He goes, I really improved so much. And I'd give him targets to meet as well with his left foot. I'd say, okay, when you visualise, and then every other week, just go out there and see if you can ping a ball, take a corner. Just ways and means we could measure if he was improving, which was key. Can you get a ball 30, 40 yards? Just little milestones to break his belief barrier. So it was quite powerful to do that. So on one hand we were visualising technically, but on the other hand as well, we did visualisation tactically too. Now, to do the visualisation process, technically we want to break the technique down. When I first asked this lad about his technique with his left foot, and I said, close your eyes and tell me what you do technically. If you were going to teach me, tell me what you do technically. You know what? When he came back, I knew straight away he wasn't effective with his left foot. And the reason why I knew was because the way he explained the technique to me was very broken down. So if that's something in your mind, then what's going on the outfield? And think about it. When you ask someone, how do you do a tennis serve? If they associate to that serve subconsciously, and you ask them what they do step by step, and they can't recall that fluently, you've got to ask yourself what's going on in their mind sequentially. Okay, one way to gauge. So even in conversation, I can gauge someone's technical ability just by talking to them and by asking them, what do you do? How do you do the process? I can guarantee if you went up to someone who's an outstanding performer in their field and said, what do you do technically? They'd be able to subconsciously give you a step-by-step process of what they do technically, very fluently, because it's in their mind, which is key. I do agree, because it's at a subconscious level, like when we drive a car, if someone said, how do you drive a car? You'd struggle probably to explain to someone how you would drive a car, but if you took a moment to close your eyes and visualise and think about how you drove the car, you'd be able to give someone valuable information in terms of what you would do step by step to do it as well. And a good performer that knows technical ability could recite that. Now technically, it's not my job, if it's not my field, to give the performer that technique. Okay, someone comes to see me and they're a tennis player, a tennis serve, I'm not going to go away and read a book on how to hit a tennis serve technically and tell them to do that. I'm going to say, look, go speak to your coach. If you haven't got a coach, go get a coach, or go see the best in the business and find out what to do. If they're a golfer, I'm not going to tell them how to swing, because it's not my profession. I know a bit about it, but not enough to improve. So I go see someone. If it's football, even though I'm a football coach myself and do work in industry, I still would refer them to a coach to get that technical breakdown, which is key. So for example, the way we would visualise technique in football would be the steps. If we're going to break down the steps of striking a ball, it would be, and this is just an example, so you've got the ball in your mind, what you're reciting, so the steps to striking the ball. So it might be, okay, putting the ball down, okay, stepping back, approaching the ball on the angle, arms out for balance, approach the ball, keep your head down, and strike the ball through with your laces. And I'll go through those steps with the performer and negotiate those steps with a coach. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay, and I get them to embed that in their mind. So the next time they're out in the field, where they've got an opportunity to strike the ball, okay, the technique becomes a skill. Because technically, you can teach anyone to literally do anything. Okay, technically, you know, but turning that into a skill is a different matter altogether. Okay, so you could teach anyone in this hotel today how to strike a ball, and they could hit a ball reasonably well enough. Put in the game situation, it's a different scenario altogether. Okay, because they've got to try and find space to strike the ball, they've got to get to the opportunity. There's the tactical element to do that. But if you haven't got that foundation, then you've got nothing to work with. And that's what's really important, having that foundation. So if I've got a performer and they've got to take a free kick or a penalty, one of the things I'll tell them to think about is just focus on the process. Leave the outcome to one side. Forget scoring the goal. Forget, the consequences of scoring the goal. Focus purely on getting the ball in the back of the net or the free kick. Focus purely on the process. Put everything else to the back of your mind. The outcome, what it means, winning the cup, all that sort of stuff. You don't need any of that stuff in your mind. All you need to do is put the ball down and execute your technique, your skill. Okay? And that's as much as you can do. There will be times that, you know, the keeper flies to one side and bang, tips the ball over the bar, and there's not a lot you can do about that. It's just life, isn't it, in sport. Sometimes you meet someone who is at that level that can do that. There will be times that you play against someone who underperforms, okay, which is key. All you can do is play to the very best of your ability. That's as much as anyone can ask you to do. Just perform to your level, okay, and beyond that, see what happens. You know, there's some performers that in their day, you know, people like your Federers and, you know, your Woods in his day and that sort of stuff. When they're at it, when they're at the races, you know, they're at that level. They're you know, they're at a very, very high level. You know, but they have off days too. They can be beaten. You know, anyone can be beaten. They have off days. I think the worst thing for a sports person is when you kick yourself. Think, if I had done this and I had done that, you know, what I could have done. And I think by doing this process, you put yourself in a driving seat to go from there. So I'm going to demonstrate the process with you.
Okay.
Okay. So the first thing I would do, is to get a breakdown of the technique. So talk me through
Iron shots.
So your iron shot. Any particular irons?
No. Well, maybe low irons, maybe between kind of 3 and 5 irons.
Between 3 and 5.
Because I seem to be able to hit the higher irons a lot better.
So you can hit a high iron a lot better.
Yeah.
But the 3 and 5.
Yeah.
Okay. So the 3 and 5. Okay. And in terms of your own technique to do that, if you just close your eyes and relax, I want you to fully associate to a time when you use the 3 or a 5 iron. Fully associate to a time when you use the 3 or a 5 iron, and just talk me through that process.
So I'm standing over the ball.
You stand over the ball.
I have the club in my hand.
Club in the hand.
With the you know, the correct grip.
Yeah.
Making sure that my thumb is sort of over like that.
Yeah.
So it's pointing straight down the club.
Yeah.
Swing the club back slowly until it's in line with my body. Break the arms back then as I'm rotating around. Keep my head down, looking at the ball. And then slowly then bring the club back down and around, following through and back up the far side.
Okay. Is that what you do technically?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if I was feeling brave, I might try and flick the wrists as I'm coming through to get an extra bit of club head speed. But you know, that's sometimes where the wheels fall off the wagon a bit.
Yeah.
Trying to get trying to get ahead of myself.
Okay. And that's interesting, really, because you use the metaphor there for what happens when you flick the wrist, really. You use the metaphor for what could happen when you do that. Does that always happen when you flick your wrist? Does it always happen?
Sometimes it'll work.
Sometimes it does work.
And I think I'm Tiger Woods. And I'll wind up duffing the ball or something.
Yeah.
Or I might lift my head
Yeah.
to admire the shot before I've hit it.
Yeah.
And tap the ball and it scutters along the ground.
Okay, so you're aware of what you're doing. You're lifting your head to admire the shot.
Yeah, sometimes I do that,
Yeah.
and sometimes then I'm trying. I mightn't turn enough, or sometimes I'm going too hard at it, trying to kill it.
Okay.
Or if, say, I'm just off the fairway, which would happen a fair amount, and I'm trying to kill the ball to get it out of the rough, then I'm trying to kind of hit it that bit harder because I know the rough is going to sort of take a bit of the distance out of the shot.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to overcompensate by trying to drill it out.
Okay, which is a tactical element of the game, yeah. So
and then my technique then goes a bit sort of out of kilter because I'm sort of trying to burst it,
Okay, and I suppose having referenced that, that would be a process that you'd look at. That would be a tactical element of the game. So when you're in that situation, you could use that as a permutation in terms of what you would do in that situation. That's something you could then isolate your technique in that situation, just like you could do taking a penalty in a penalty shootout, serving for a match, whatever it is. You could sort of then transfer that into a game situation. You certainly can. To begin with, the key is really to highlight a technique that you want to run with, which is adaptable. I'm not suggesting that you always flick the wrist, but what I'm suggesting you might want to consider doing is maybe start as you mean to go on. Your A game might be to flick the wrist, and for whatever reason, if that's not going to plan, you can always scale back, which is key. But the way to improve is to go beyond yourself and just challenge yourself and think, you know what, if I mess up, I'm going to mess up in training, it's not a problem. That's the key. But you want to take what you do in training into a game in an ideal scenario, which is important. But we've got a breakdown here. Now, what I would suggest to do going forward, and what I would do as a mental skills coach, I would then contact my client's golf coach, okay? And I would say, we've highlighted a problem here, where the wrist is concerned. Well, a potential problem. It may not be a problem, but I'd highlight what we've covered. And I would go back and I would liaise and say, you know what, can we be very clear about the process we want the performer to adapt to? Can we be very, very clear? So when the client goes back to the coach and they're practicing using a 3 to 5 iron, they're very clear on what they're going to do. They're very clear step by step. Their foot position, their head position, their grip, they're very clear step by step. And that's a negotiation between the coach and the client to decide how they structure the technique. My job is now to filter that into the mind of the client when they're happy with the sequential structure of that technique. So that's what I would do. When the client goes away and negotiates the technical process with the coach and they agree on how they're going to improvise this technique, because at this level, at a certain level of the game, it goes beyond textbook. Okay, some of the best performers in the world are non-textbook, so they've got to negotiate based on the person's physiology and experience and adaptability, a process, and that would be a coach relationship. It wouldn't be my job to say, okay, we thought about doing this, that and the other, unless I was at the level I felt comfortable enough in that field to do that. So I would be open and say to the coach, you know what, we want to improve the 3 or 5, okay, can you work with the performer and work on this technique? They would work on it physically. Having worked on it physically, the next time you come back to me, we will work on it mentally. And the way we would do that is I would recite the process, the technical process, step by step in your own mind. Okay, and I would embed that in your mind. Okay, I would embed that in your mind, and I'll get you to mentally rehearse that process over and over again till it became a part of your game. What was the classic quote that that golfer said? He'd never missed a shot, never missed a putt. The classic quote, was it Woosnam who said that he'd never missed a putt in his mind. Now, in his own mind, or Jack Nicklaus had made that quote, "I've never missed a putt." In his own mind, I'm sure he's referring to visualization. He'd visualize the golf ball going in. Of course, there were times he didn't get in the hole, because he's human, and as a human, we all make mistakes. But more often than not, he would succeed. Okay, not because I would think he was any more gifted than maybe many golfers on the circuit. It was just he was mentally wired up to succeed, which is key. So if I can do a demonstration based on the technique that we've got here already, and obviously beyond this, as I mentioned earlier, it would be a negotiation with you, a coach, or someone who could instruct you on the process of technically going through the process. But I'll take you through this process anyway.
Yeah.
And then I can embed it in your mind. So if you just close your eyes and really relax. Okay, I want you to really relax. And with your eyes closed, what I want you to do is just imagine using a 3 or a 5-iron. Okay, I want you to imagine going through the process of using a 3 or a 5-iron, step by step. So you're standing over the ball, you have the club in your hand and you have the correct grip. Your thumbs are pointing straight. You're swinging back slowly, rotating, head down, slowly bring down, following through and flicking the wrist for extra distance. And we're just going to go through that again. So you're standing over the ball, club in the hand with the correct grip, thumbs pointing straight, swing back slowly, rotate, head down, following through, flicking the wrist. Brilliant. I'm just going to go through that again. I'll give you time to process that again. So just going through that technique again, standing over the ball, club in hand, correct grip, thumb pointing straight, swinging back slowly, rotating, head down, slowly bring down the follow through, flick the wrist for extra. Okay. And gradually coming back to the here and now in your own time and your own pace. And you can go over that on several occasions. Now, you'll note that I used the flip chart as a guide to make sure that the information I was putting back in was based on your technique. So, in a situation where I'm working with someone, I'm using exactly their language patterns, because words are just labels. Okay, I'm not changing one of the words to suit me. I'm very meticulous about the words I use, because they're the client's language patterns, and words are just labels. I'm not deciding, you know what, it might sound better if I do it this way. Or I watched golf the other night and saw someone talk about a certain golfer do something. I'll put that in. That's not my job to do that. I've got to be very clear and use their language, what works for them, which is key, or what they've negotiated with the coach, which is key. And that's pretty much how you do that process to isolate a technique, to isolate whatever it is in any sport, be it tennis, backhand, forehand, serve, football, striking the ball, free kick, even weight training, a process, step by step, step 1, step 2, step 3, whatever it might be, to be very clear in your own mind. How did you feel when you went through the process? Good?
I'd be much more confident about going out now and hitting the 3-iron shots, because I just slow it down, take a practice swing and sort of maybe even close my eyes and do a practice, and then stand up and address the ball. But like even the first time we did it, I'd never thought about what I actually do in as much detail before. Yeah. So even just going through that